welcome back to another episode of the Career Empowerment Podcast, where we share forward-thinking leadership perspective, inspirational success stories, and actionable executive job search and customer acquisition tips to help you take control of your career. My name is Kyle Gantos. I'm the founder and CEO at meetyourgig.com, and I believe everyone is happier when you love your work and the people you share it with. Since 2015, our innovative online training has empowered over 1,000 purpose-driven business leaders with the competitive advantage, confidence, and connections to maximize career fulfillment. My goal for this podcast is to help you do the same. In this episode, we discuss how to create dream executive level jobs and consulting gigs by helping people grow their business. Part interview, part case study, we're going to dive into this potentially life-changing topic with Alex Welk, who's a strategic planning, business optimization, sales, and customer success executive who just secured a $250 an hour consulting gig, compelled 2 emerging businesses to explore creating VP level roles around his specific skill set, and potentially broker a 9-figure strategic partnership, all while working full-time and balancing a growing family. As far as I know, Alex is a human being just like you and me. So how did he do it? Take a listen.
So my name's Alex Welk, based in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Industrial engineer by trade, and kind of running operations, process improvement, balance of strategy and execution role throughout my career. I found Kyle, as he mentioned several months ago. I think I had probably the right mindset and tenacity to go out and find something new that I desired. But, it took kind of getting engaged with Meet Your Gig to really kind of flip my process on its head for me to go and really truly cast a wider net and be a little bit more efficient in my search. And boy, has it paid off in terms of the production and results I've gotten in that short time window.
Well, and excited to dive into that specifically today. And, I think a recurring theme here is going to be that for anyone listening out there, I want you to really pay attention to Alex's mindset. As he mentioned, he already, had the vision before. It's so important if whatever it is for you, for anyone listening out there, whenever that light bulb goes off and you say, you know what, I deserve something better. I want something more. If you've got that and you can harness it, everything we're about to talk about is going to fuel your execution. And so, Alex, before we kind of get into the how, I would love to maybe just spend a moment or two. You mentioned you had the drive, you had the ambition, but maybe just didn't have the toolkit or the specific process. In your mind, before Meet Your Gig, how did you perceive, how one creates opportunities or how one finds a better job or how one, goes about the whole job search process? How did you view the world at that time?
Yeah, I think, in short, I think I was probably, and in retrospect now, hindsight's always 20/20, right? But I was probably lost, is fair to say. I knew I had a great background, a great skill set, tons of value to deliver, but I was kind of in the rat race of the recruiting game, right? I was out there kind of applying for jobs, talking to people, but really kind of hunt and peck on the keyboard to find something, and then sit around and wait and hope somebody's going to call. And that's just not a recipe for success. And the efficiency factor, not a ton of results over a fairly extended period of time. Kind of out there finding my way through as best I could, and I hadn't done it in probably 8 or 9 years. So going back to it, it was unfamiliar territory and context to begin with. After nearly a decade, but I was just kind of hunting and pecking and hoping something would work out, quite honestly.
Well, and I think that's kind of that's the common way to do it. I want to ask you one, maybe the question that I got to imagine that at some point during our call today, somebody's going to be listening and going, when did the light bulb go off? How did the light bulb go off? What was it that happened, or what was going on in your mind to be able to say, because I think a lot of people, what you just described, a lot of people feel that way, kind of think that way, but very few people actually, and I don't know what word to use, very few people like wake up and go, you know what I'm doing is not working. Maybe there's a better way, and maybe I do have this versatile background. Maybe I have accomplished some amazing things. I haven't had to look for a job in 8 years. Like, I've got a lot to offer. How did you go from where most people maybe in that position, every day they're more focused on, well, I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to do this. Whereas somehow you were able to mentally escape that and go, well, why wouldn't I do this? I need to do this. So what went on in your mind? What was it, a mathematical equation? Was it a feeling that you had? How did you come to that, I'm ready to do something smarter?
Yeah, I mean, I think at its core, just brutal self-honesty, right? Looking yourself in the mirror, maybe even literally and certainly figuratively, to say, if I continue at this pace, right, knowing I have a lot to offer, but I mean, this is going to take, this could take another, for the type of opportunity and the profile of an executive role that I'm looking and searching for. I mean, this could be another 6 months to a year, right? And, quite honestly, I couldn't wait that long, right? So I think, maybe some personal circumstance and fear around, hey, new family, new budding family, right, little ones at home, and we're tapping into savings, and we're doing different things to make it financially, right? But at the rate I was going, I mean, I think there was some fear and some brutal honesty that I had to say, this has to change, and there's got to be a better way.
Well, and you bring up a couple good points. You got people who are counting on you. You've got responsibilities. You've got some pressure, and it's almost what I'm hearing. I relate to as an entrepreneur is there's been some times in my life when it's kind of like when you don't have any other choice. All of a sudden, your commitment level goes through the roof, and you just go, I'm going to figure out a way. And it's when you kind of have that, well, I've got this backup plan, and I've got this other stuff, and then maybe we don't find that. But just hearing you describe that kind of, that's what it reminds me of. And very important, because everything that Alex is about to describe all has to stem back to what he just talked about. That feeling, that vision, that I got to do something. Without that, I don't think any of the other stuff is possible, because otherwise you get into the trap of saying I want to do all these things. It sounds good, it feels good for like 5 minutes, but then when it comes time to actually do it, you find an excuse. Alex is not an excuse guy, and he's got some outstanding leadership. And one of the things that is, I think, and I'm really interested in getting your perspective on this, and we can talk a little bit about how you did it, but there are opportunities everywhere. I mean, they're all around us. There's startups, there's emerging businesses, there's middle market, billion-dollar companies in your backyard you've never heard of. There's big Fortune 1000 companies that are rebranding, launching new products, mergers, acquisitions, and every one of these organizations consists of people. And especially the people at the top, they've all got goals, they've all got a vision, and it doesn't matter what background, what industry you come from. If you find something you're passionate about and you take time to meet people and you go learn and not go, what's in it for me? Do you have a job? How can you help Alex out? But tell me about your business. Tell me what you're doing. What are your goals? Where are you looking to take this thing? What are your challenges? And you start to just go in and go, I want to help people. I want to solve problems. Then there's so many amazing people out there. There's so many compelling challenges out there. And all of a sudden, this world that maybe a few months ago you looked at and you go, man, no matter what I do, it seems like nobody appreciates and notices me. Then you just fast forward, and then now it's, man, there's opportunities everywhere, and I'm quite literally creating my own market. And I probably, for some people, that's like, well, how the heck do you do that? And maybe other people are going, man, even if I knew how to do it, I don't know if I'd have the courage to go talk to strangers and go do that. But Alex, I'm sure there's a million things that come to mind for you, whether it's how you did it, the mindset, maybe things you were surprised at, but just to kind of give you a blank canvas, how did you go from where you were to where you are right now? And of course, we'll talk about the position you've created for yourself.
Sure. No, absolutely. I think it begins with trusting the process, right? And that starts at the very beginning of really developing a world-class premier of product, in the form of a value proposition and in the form of a truly distinguished resume product, a LinkedIn profile, a concise and compelling elevator pitch that, to your point, everything's an opportunity, right? And when I get into some of what I've been up to, in fact, just starting a new gig this past week, I was prepared for the right moment and the right opportunity. Had I not taken those steps at the onset of the process and trusting the process, I would not have been in the position. And I'll get into some more detail later about kind of how that happened. But trusting the process early on, and I knew I was building something special as we worked through. I knew it was probably at a level, despite my talents, I think, that I probably would have ever reached on my own, that I know I would have never reached on my own. But from building that product, I think the light bulb went off when I really put it into practice and, executing some of the strategies and tactics that allowed me to use, I think one analogy that I really love from some recent marketing material that I've seen of Meet Your Gig, and is kind of the analogy of hunting in a river with a spear, right? And that's kind of how most people hunt, and changing that outlook to how do I cast the widest, deepest net that I can, right? And then kind of sort through the opportunities that are the right fit for me. And once I had that product and put it into action and followed a number of the strategies and tactics, that net started to fill up and quicker than I would have ever guessed or imagined. And it really wasn't rocket science, right? It was executing and executing consistently, day in, day out, week in, week out, and creating those leads and filling the net. And that's really to date all I've done, but nothing but traction and pretty compelling results in a short period of time have happened since I started trusting the process and execute.
Well, and I think you bring up something that's very, very important. One of the things, of course, given what I do, I'm probably more aware of this than most people who are you become aware of it when you need to, find a job. But there are, one of the things that is very important about the process that Alex is mentioning is that he built his value proposition. There were resources, there were some guidelines, there was a process to follow that were quality assurance checkpoints, but building that world-class product himself, and there's a lot of people you can go pay to write a resume for you, write a LinkedIn for you, but you're the one who's got to go meet people. You're the one who's got to go solve their problems. You're the one who's got to demonstrate that you're, I love using that word, product. Your product is their solution, and you can't just go in there and say, well, I've got a great product. Are you ready to buy? I've got a great product. You look at my resume. Are you ready to extend me, $250,000 a year salary and give me the keys to your company? No, you can have a great resume, a great LinkedIn, but it's only as powerful as your ability to be able to back it up and also to get it to market. And so one of the things Alex is mentioning, the tactics, and we don't necessarily have to go into the specifics of each tactic, but it's casting that large net. So it's build this amazing product, build it yourself, understand it inside and out, understand what you need to communicate to other people for them to hand over the keys to their business for you. They don't just hand it over because you've got a degree. They don't just hand it over because you've got 15 years of experience. You actually got to solve a problem, and you got to be able to communicate the value you can create so that they can then go back and you go, like any business investment, if we invest X, we're going to get 10X return. Of course we'll do that. But they got to trust it, and the only way they're going to trust it is for you to build your product, know your product inside and out, get it to market, and then be able to back it up and illustrate based on who I'm meeting with in this room versus that room, how can my product help you specifically? And when you're able to do that on a massive scale consistently, and Alex has done this better than most, then you're going to have opportunities coming to it. And then the next step is qualifying them, filtering it, not just going, you know what, I'm going to try to make everything fit because I need a job so bad, but I want to find the right fit. And again, I think that's another level of enlightenment, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Alex. Just, maybe roughly over the past few months, how many people have you met? What are some of their titles? What are some of your initial impressions from those discussions? It's very different than, here's my resume, do you have a job? Maybe you could just touch on a few of those things. Who did you meet with? How many people did you meet? And kind of maybe at a high level, what are some of the things you talk about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, one kind of point, bridging the gap on something I think that you said that really resonated with me is, given that there is some urgency and pressure, it's a little counterintuitive when you think about how to go into a lot of these meetings and learn about the people, learn about their challenges, start to understand, what do they need to be successful to, either solve a problem or build a solution or grow a business, whatever the task may be, truly understanding and internalizing that, and then learning and internalizing, how can I help this person, right? What hat have I worn in this capacity that would benefit this situation, help them solve their business challenges? And there's a bridge you have to go through mentally there, particularly when, you're kind of in the mode of, I really need to find something, right? So you got to get into that mindset, because that's truly when doors started kind of opening, and I started getting more traction in a second meeting and a third opportunity to say, okay, let's really sit down and talk about this now. It was from demonstrating that I understood the problems. I've been there. I've done this. I'm the guy or resource that can come in and help you solve this problem, and do that in a compelling way that gives them the confidence and helps you earn the trust early to get in and do that. So, as I started reaching out to people through my own warm network, they started seeking out professionals with titles of the types of folks and positions that I would want to report to, right? So EVPs, SVPs, COOs, presidents, founders, co-founders, et cetera. These are the types of people that I seeked out, as I went to kind of try to solicit meetings and get-togethers. And, I think when you have all these things overlaid and working at the same time, that's really when momentum built for me. So, I admittedly started probably a little bit slow, and I'd employ one strategy and get a whole set of results, and then maybe the next week I'd layer one on. But by week 3 or 4, as I started doing all the things kind of in sync and consistently, that's really when it got to the point where, I easily was at 6, 8, maybe even 10 meetings in a given week, and I really had to be selective about, what's the best use of my time, right? And that was a vast departure from the life I was living 4 to 6 weeks earlier, where I was kind of sitting around hoping I could get a meeting, sometime in the next 3 weeks. So those are the types of roles that I met with. And, again, I really kind of had to turn off the pipe, if you would, and be a little bit selective from all the new connections I made on LinkedIn, where was my time best suited to spend, in terms of a target organization, a target type of leader, to learn more about and invest my time in them. And again, that was a vastly different mindset.
Yeah, and then speaking of different mindset, you bring up a couple things that I think a common buzzword is networking or power networking. And I know there's some people out there, and it tends to be kind of your type A personalities, your extroverted folks who, hey, I'm already networking. I already meet with people regularly. But there's something tactically that's so important here, and especially when it's reaching out to EVPs, SVPs, COOs, co-founders, founders. When you're reaching out to complete strangers, if you reach out asking for something or saying, hey, let's get together, let's share ideas, let's do there's a very fine line, and most people are on the wrong side of it, because it's all about what's in it for me. Hey, here's my resume, or hey, let's get together. Hey, let's discuss some business ideas. And immediately in that conversation, people may be friendly, but you're not going to get somebody to open up about their business if their first impression of you is this person's in the market, they're looking for a job, and they're here today to see how I can help them. And that takes, well, to your point, it's not rocket science, but it is a paradigm shift mentally. And then when you add in some of the financial pressure, it becomes even more challenging. And then there's probably a lot of people listening who are going, man, I'm introverted. That sounds uncomfortable. But when you approach it that way, how did, maybe if you just think about a couple different conversations and maybe the one that led to the gig you had now, and by the way, I think, Alex, you were working during doing some of this, right?
I was, yeah. I was absolutely kind of managing a business that's family owned and run, as well as doing kind of some freelance consulting simultaneous. So this was kind of a spare time effort a lot of the time. Yes.
Yeah, well, and okay, and there's a lot of you listening right now who are working full time, and maybe you want to find a better opportunity, and you're going, man, I don't have time to be meeting with this guy's running a family business, doing consulting gigs, and doing all of this. And so I kind of went away from the initial question, but I just wanted to throw that in there, because if you want it and you just make a little bit of time and you're consistent, you can create opportunities. But how you do that, and I want to go back to that question, Alex. The mindset shift of what's in it for me. Hey, let's power network. How can we help each other? Oh, can you make an introduction to this person for me? And can you go out of your way to help a complete stranger and donate to my employment charity?
Right.
Some people may think that works, but it only works when you're in the right place at the right time with the right person. And even if it does work, it's probably not going to be a lucrative, compelling, long-term opportunity. It's going to be somebody who's looking to plug a hole right today. And you just happen to show up on their doorstep. Talk a little bit about the completely different mindset, and this goes along the lines of there are opportunities out there, but if you focus on what's in it for you, you're never going to see them. So how does this process help you be able to actually identify the opportunities and actually build a market?
Yeah, so interesting story about the gig. You had mentioned, that I just started now, which is a consulting project that'll take me through the end of the year, and we could talk a little bit more about that. But highly lucrative, short period of time. It's kind of interesting how this happened. Of all things, I met a CEO and president of a company, kind of in passing, at kind of a neighborhood local eatery / sports bar. He was there by himself, watching a football game, and happened to bump elbows with him. I'd met this gentleman probably a year and a half previous, and we'd exchanged information at that time. It was more just kind of a casual social thing. I was happy where I was. But I came across this individual, and what I alluded to earlier about being prepared is I knew exactly who he was, and I remembered him right away. And prior to having just run into him, I had done some research on the company and, understanding what he was really up to these days. But more than that, I had this finished product, and I had quite a bit of practice at that point. Some practice that I learned by not doing so great, or maybe stumbling a little bit and tweaking my delivery of my message. But boy, when I saw him there, and we kind of were introduced again through a mutual friend, it was a situation where I had everything kind of ready to go. And with jumping right in, I mean, I focused entirely, on his situation, what he was up to, what they were looking to do, from a business perspective, and how things were going. And he was very, very open. He remembered me. But I got to kind of his business objectives and some of his pain points, I would say, within the first 10 to 15 minutes of talking. And almost as one of the most natural things that's happened in this search, the conversation soon transitioned to, so what are you up to these days, Alex? And, I mentioned some of the things that I was doing, but it was a very natural transition. I went into a pretty well-polished and practiced elevator speech, and that I kind of riffed a little bit on that relative to the hats. I think would be very helpful in some of what I'd learned about his business and some of the challenges they were facing. And I would say within a 45-minute to hour time frame, we had a meeting set up the following week to sit down and talk. a little bit more of a formal fashion. And I can go into more detail on that later, but I'd say within a few days I was connecting with other members of the C-suite within that company, and had some great dialogue and conversation. And that really led me to this opportunity that I have today that has every potential to grow into a full-time role. But now I'm helping them on a freelance and contractual basis. But again, it's a great stepping stone and a very lucrative opportunity both ways.
Yeah, and I do want to build up to that, and there's even another opportunity, and we'll talk about the power of connecting dots, and we'll get to that here in just a moment, which is very powerful. And that takeaway, if you're with us still, then that's going to blow your mind. But I think that there are people who refer to themselves as leaders, and then there are leaders. And to me, a genuine leader is somebody that doesn't wait and ask and hope for permission for something to happen. So we've already talked about all the different executives that Alex reached out to directly. I see on LinkedIn every day people asking me, hey, can you make an introduction to this person? Or, hey, do you know this person? Or, just reaching out directly. That's a form of leadership, saying I want something. I'm not intimidated. I'm going to reach out and make it happen. Some people will meet with me. Some people won't. So what? I'm going to spend my time with the people who will. The next thing is, as you mentioned, consistently executing this process is there are some, we'll call them failures, but really it's just being in different situations, reacting in certain ways, and then learning from that and going, well, what did I learn from that? And how does that compare to the other 5 people I met with? Did this person really blow me away? This person didn't. I responded this way last time. Maybe I'll tweak this. But because we're meeting with so many people week in and week out, you learn rapidly. And the only way you're going to be prepared for that moment when you walk into a sports bar and see a CEO that you met a year ago is for you to really be spending time practicing on yourself and building that value proposition and meeting with other people and having those discussions. And pretty soon, it doesn't take long, you get very, very comfortable and you get very, very polished, and you're no different than the person you were 6 months prior, except now you just got the right habits and you're practicing regularly so that when that opportunity presents itself, you're there to capitalize on it. And then the other form of leadership is being able to solve problems. And there's so many people in our society that, and I think everybody's capable of this. Some people are more creative than others, but most of us practice it. And one great way to be able to practice how to identify opportunities is to meet with a lot of people in a lot of different industries, in a lot of different companies, and just get to know them and ask them questions. And so by being able to ask those questions, to Alex's point, it doesn't take long, maybe 10, 15 minutes to kind of pinpoint what their pain point is. And until you identify someone's pain point, you could be the most polished CEO on the planet. You've built and scaled and exited 3 companies. You've made millions of dollars. But if the person you're talking to doesn't know they have a need and they don't know that you can solve it, it doesn't matter how great you are. There's no pain point for you to solve. Therefore, there's no opportunity there. But when you go into it focusing on, I'm going to ask, I'm going to scope, I'm going to figure out people, I'm going to get to know them, I'm going to find out what makes them tick, I'm going to learn about their business, it doesn't take long for you to be able to see the opportunities. And then to the last point about leadership is being able to see opportunities, but then being able to create opportunities. And that goes back to knowing your product, knowing that, hey, what hat does this person need me to wear? What stories do I have? What can I articulate that will build some trust that not only can I help them solve this pain point, but here's my process for it. Here's the value I've created doing it. And the next thing you know, Alex is like this unicorn that you on the inside of the building, you don't have somebody who's working this hard, who's getting paid. Next thing you know, here's this guy who's going out of his way, who's genuinely interested in your company, going out of his way to try to solve problems and help you grow it, and not expecting anything in return. And that's, what? That should resonate. That's logical to everybody, but you know how few people execute that? And it just goes to show you that if you're willing to do it, you can create opportunities. And by the way, concurrently, Alex is doing this with many other people, and in fact, another organization right down the street. And maybe, Alex, you could talk a little bit about, kind of build our way towards how the phrase "connect the dots." I think Alex
Sure.
is probably the best person I've ever worked with who's quite literally created his own market, buzzword, and connected the dots. Talk a little bit about what's all going on right now with these two organizations that, you're basically the matchmaker, but, you had to earn that. So how did that all plan out?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of coming off of the, the conversation that I had with this gentleman, and, it took a few weeks to kind of shape up, but, also to, as you alluded to, it was persistence on my part. It was check-ins. It was, putting together a 90-day action plan and demonstrating proactively, not being asked to, but saying, here's what I know about your business. Here's what I heard. Here's how I would frame up a project to come in and help you solve this issue. Right. And I'd say, sending that maybe within a week's time, I was engaged then at that point with his CFO, and we were starting to talk about, alignment around a legal engagement together. Can you still hear me okay, Kyle?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Sorry. I'm having some technical difficulties here with my headset. So in doing that, I obviously had a number of other irons in the fire, and I had gone on the road on another interview that was kind of at my initiation with some senior level executives. And then I kind of got ingrained and met with, I want to say, somewhere between 8 and maybe even a dozen folks. When I had gone into this corporate interview, it was really, I was scheduled with 2 people. One of them didn't show up, but it led to handoff upon handoff of, hey, you really need to talk to this gentleman. I think there's something here. He could really help us with where we're at. And as I started to think more about it, and we're still in conversations there as to what that might look like, there's not a position today, but I think the wheels are turning on their side of the house to say, how can we get this gentleman in to help us? Because I think there's a ton of value he can help us deliver. So as these 2 things are going on, and I better understand the scope of this consulting project, there's really some phenomenal synergy by which I could connect these organizations to help solve a problem and generate new business on the part of the other organization. So the potential is there where they could help solve this situation. I have now a whole new set of network within both organizations. And, one day, either in the short or mid-term, it may be very well appropriate to make an introduction and figure out how I can kind of leverage my relationships with both to create yet more work, more opportunity, and, resulting income, incentive, et cetera, through bringing these organizations together. And, pretty incredible just with the irons in the fire and how those things work out. But it was a matter of preparation, connecting those dots, and then being able to seize every opportunity to think, how can I leverage my relationships here in a meaningful way that can better both organizations. And that's a very real opportunity and possibility that's on the horizon that I'm working right now.
And it's a credit to your leadership. And again, all this, the same person, a few months prior, different process.
Right.
Same drive, not any more effort required, perhaps even less effort, but less time spent clicking buttons, waiting, hoping, getting frustrated, analyzing, questioning, asking for permission, and
right.
Now more time meeting people. And you can obviously kind of do the math here, and Alex has met with dozens and dozens of business leaders, many of whom he had no relationship with. And most of those conversations are comfortable, they're fun, they're engaging, and you start to realize that there's a lot of great people out there, and they've all got dreams, and they've all got a vision, and the ones who I really like, and the conversations are easy. It's not selling, it's solving. And even for you sales folks out there, even for you who are trying to land consulting gigs, grow your consulting business, if you're in business development and sales, so many people spam. It's all about what's the shortest, quickest way for me to get a customer today, and you end up getting them working, quarter to quarter, quota to quota. You get them. only by being in the right place at the right time, but you're missing out on the other 99% of people who you could be building relationships with, getting to know them and their business. And then, if you do it at Alex's level, you can actually see opportunities that even people within those organizations may not be talking. And now here's somebody who, a few weeks ago was not employed by either organization, but who already can see a vision of the future to where these two organizations potentially could work together to grow both of their businesses. Now, how many of you listening are doing that? How many of you listening are even willing to make 5 hours a week to create opportunities? How many of you are meeting with people and focusing on how can I help them versus how do I find a job here? Oh, if there's not a job immediately visible, then I'm not going to do any extra effort. How many of you go to interviews and actually put together a 90-day action plan to show them your vision and show them how much you care and how much you're ready to get started, versus how many of you just go, okay, interview's done, I'll send them a thank you letter and maybe I'll hear back, and you're sitting playing the waiting game. You're not showing leadership, which means that you're just blending in with the other 5 or 10 people who are doing the exact same thing. And for every 99 of those people, there's an Alex. There's an Alex out there who's going, I'm not afraid to work a little bit harder. I'm not afraid to work a little bit smarter. I'm not afraid to show people that I care. I'm not afraid to build relationships with people that could open up doors years from now, because I'm so focused on what's in it for me 24 hours from now. And also to be able to showcase, and by the way, getting practice. So many of you who go, well, I'm really well connected. Really, when was the last time you followed up with the people you're connected with? How much do you know their business? Are you prepared to walk in to a sports bar and see a CEO that you met a year ago and be able to have an intelligent conversation about how that person's looking to grow their business? Would you even remember their name? So are you connected, or are you engaged with people? And by the way, every time Alex meets with somebody new, he's acquiring more knowledge. He's acquiring more information. For some of you, that might seem like, oh, that's a lot of extra work. That's exactly why Alex is going to be creating opportunities, and you're going to be waiting for things to happen. And so it doesn't require that much extra effort. It just requires to build some habits and be consistent. And speaking of doing the little things, none of it, because it's not rocket science. None of this it should all be very logical. But the reason why Alex is in the position he's in, and many of you are hearing this, getting excited, but you may not achieve that same level, is because all the little details. It's the little details that matter. And those details, you accelerate your learning when you're meeting with lots of people and you're having different discussions and you're taking knowledge and insights from this industry, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, you can pair them over with somebody in a completely different space. And all of a sudden you sound really, really smart, but all you're doing is just crowdsourcing wisdom and perspective and intelligence, which allows you to be even sharper the next person you meet. And even if you love where you work, imagine getting outside of your building a few times a month and meeting with different people. All of a sudden you're getting away from that culture that's been ingrained to train you to think a certain way, and now you're seeing all these opportunities that can only make you better. Even if you love your job and your employer, just doing that a little bit can make you better, but you got to stop thinking what's in it for me and, oh my gosh, this is a lot of extra work. That's not leadership. So this is a credit to Alex's leadership. And speaking of that 90-day plan, which, by the way, that's first off, nobody does it. Second, by doing it, you're actually giving that person a chance to test drive the Alex product. They're getting to see how you think, how you deliver, your communication skills, what your plan is, and who better to go execute that plan than you. By the way, it matches up with all of the conversations they've had, plus what they saw on paper. Now, everybody else, it's, hey, maybe you've got a piece of paper that looks really good. And then maybe you come in and, man, you've got these beautifully rehearsed questions and you've practiced your STAR behavioral responses, but you still sound like everybody else. What are you actually doing to show me you want to work and grow and believe in my company? And that 90-day plan, Alex, just so for anyone listening out there, it's not just the plan, it's the product and the building rapport and meeting people and finding out how can I help them, what can I learn from them, what plan can I develop. But when you go do all that, I'd hate that at the risk of asking you a question that maybe makes you uncomfortable, What was the payoff for you in the short term in terms of original offer for this consulting gig versus for just a couple hours of extra work? What was the ROI for you by willing to do some things that other people are not willing to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, point blank, it was 50% above their initial offer. So pretty sizable chunk of change.
And well deserved. And so that's not something that Alex just asked for. That's something he created value. And again, to reinforce this, in that CEO and that organization's mind, Alex is not just somebody who can get a consulting project done. If he was, why would you pay him 50% extra? I just go hire somebody else for the same rate. But because he went above and beyond, because he articulated the value he's going to create, the process, the vision, how detailed he is, how he's going to do this compared with also how he's done it before, and all these things align to where they go, you know what? We trust that if we invest in this guy 90 days from now, here's the value that we're going to have. It's real value, and we believe in it. And you know what? Of course we'll pay 50% extra because the value we're getting is worth it. And our second best option would just be somebody who can get the job done. How many of you are people who can just get the job done versus how many of you are the person that if I invest $100,000 in, you're going to make me $1 million over the next year? Think about that. Warren Buffett would pay $100,000, invest $100,000 to make a 10x return on investment. If you can do that, you can achieve the results that Alex achieved for himself, and it is 1,000% earned. It sounds great. You got to go do it, and it's just, when he told me he's got these two opportunities going on, and he's potentially he's thinking like a CEO and acting like an entrepreneur, and that is, you combine those two things together. It doesn't matter if you've got industry experience. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's simply a matter of just building relationships, meeting with people, learning, asking questions, and solving problems, and showing them your leadership.
And one thought to interject there, Kyle, if I may.
Please.
I think it's probably worth mentioning that the initial offer on that particular engagement was not a lowball offer. It was very compelling, probably even fair and equitable. I will tell you, I had great confidence in doing that, and a lot of people probably wouldn't. But I knew I had a great product, and I believed in that product. I knew I could back it up, right? And again, going back to trusting the process, which I mentioned in the very beginning, had I not gone through and internalized that and realized, wow, I've really done some amazing stuff here. I maybe didn't do a great job keeping track of it and documenting it, for the 8 or 9 years that I was gainfully employed. But boy, when I sat down and went through that exercise and arrived at my end product, I knew I had something special. I knew I could back it up. I knew I could deliver a compelling case and compelling value, and I trusted that, right? And so that resulted in a great thing for me. There was no counter to my counter. It was, yep, okay, that's agreeable, right? So, and I couldn't have done that without a great product and a great deal of confidence that I derived from that product and trusting the process.
Well, and it is having an opportunity to work with you. It absolutely is a great product, and the packaging is nice, but when you actually take the packaging off, the product's even better. And that's
right.
My favorite thing about the Alex product is that we're not done, and there's more opportunities to create, and it's continuous improvement. If you really want to do this right, think about how many people love what they do, been in great situations, corporate restructuring, mergers and acquisitions, different leadership team. You may be in a great situation now, but tomorrow everything could change, and then what? But today you've actually got, for those of you who are gainfully employed, you've got some options. You have an option. The best time to create more options is when you have an option. It really is just a few hours of effort each week, and it's a mindset. And I know Alex is pressed for time here. Has got to run briefly, but for anyone listening out there, Alex, whether they're perfectly happy, whether they are looking for a better position, whether they maybe were recently let go through no fault of their own, whether they're looking to start a consulting business, whether they're looking to grow sales or become a better business development professional, or they're just looking for more career fulfillment and to be able to sharpen their skills. Having gone through this process, what can you share? What are some words of wisdom that you might pass along to people out there who know that they're capable, like what you were saying earlier, know that, man, I'm capable of doing something more. I just need a way to do it. What would your message be for them?
Yeah, you absolutely unequivocally will benefit from these strategies, these tactics, and the development of this skill set and mindsets that you get through Meet Your Gig. It's not just a short-term thing. If you invest and make it a way of life, it will differentiate you in the marketplace, but it will also differentiate your future. I really believe that in a short period of time. If you're executing and doing these things, to your point, not just when maybe you're desperate for a job or you're looking for a new opportunity, but when you're happy and things are going great, doing this in the background is only going to let you test the market, see what's out there. It's going to develop a great deal of inner confidence in your abilities and remind you just how special your package and value proposition is or can be. But I would say that you need these skill sets. It's a necessity if you want to, live a different life, if you want to grow your future, if you want to have options, fulfillment, and abundance, if that's what you're after.
Hey, and one other thing, this is episode 2 of this podcast, and last week we had Carrie Stover, COO at Cultivate Solutions, and you can kind of hear a recurring theme in terms of two totally different conversations, but the mindset of having a vision and the little things that pay off for big results. And Carrie was gracious to share how you might be able to get in touch with him, and I wanted to afford you the same opportunity, Alex, because there may be organizations out there that appreciate your approach to business. There may be other folks out there who maybe would like to learn from your story or just have you as a connection. What would be the best way for people to learn more about Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty accessible. LinkedIn is probably a great way. It's LinkedIn, I think / Alex Welk, AlexWelk. Get in contact with me, connect. I am a very active open networker. Within the last couple of months, that's changed, and that's a great way to access me, and all my contact info is additionally there as well. It's a good single point of reference.
Well, Alex, you've been very gracious with your time, and it's been a pleasure to collaborate with you to this point. I've got a tremendous amount of respect for your leadership skills and your mindset and attitude, and learn many things from you. And love having the opportunity to share your story with others, because it's really a powerful and ongoing journey. So thank you so much for your time, and man, I can't wait to keep working with you. And I know
likewise,
your present employer and future employers, this type of leadership you can't teach, but it's certainly trained and conditioned, and we appreciate you sharing your story today, Alex.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the help and continued support. It's been a great journey, and I really look forward to continuing that with you.
Nothing gives me greater satisfaction than being around true difference makers, the people with the courage, commitment, and persistence to transform vision into reality. I'm so proud of Alex, and I can't wait to see what he does next. And it really reminds me that there are two different types of people out there. There's those who create opportunities and those who wait for opportunities to fall into their lap. And I can assure you that great companies invest in the people who create value. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're already a top performer. But ask yourself 3 questions. How effective are you at differentiating your problem solving, process, and return on investment from thousands of qualified peers with the same experience and education? How many influential business executives are you proactively meeting with each and every single month? And are you taking time to evaluate their goals, scope their challenges, and present solutions that articulate how you can take their business to the next level? Since 2015, our innovative approach has enabled 1,000+ purpose-driven business executives to generate a cumulative 20,000+ meetings and interviews with C-level decision makers, earn 2,500+ target jobs and clients, and boost income by over $12.5 million. Are you next? Take control of your career at meetyourgig.com. If you like what you just heard, please subscribe to our YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, or SoundCloud channels. If you frequent LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, or Twitter, search Meet Your Gig and follow us for additional exclusive content. And finally, you can also browse our blog, register for our innovative newsletter, and enroll in our free career empowerment training at www.meetyourgig.com. Lastly, if you have any job search, client acquisition, or career fulfillment questions or topics that you'd like us to dive into, please email admin@meetyourgig.com, and we'll do our best to share solutions on an upcoming episode. Until next time.